Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. So in today's video, I am going to cover CRUD operations in Firestore and I'll be using Node.Js to program it. Now what does CRUD stand for? So in CRUD is based out of CRUD. So C stands for create, R stands for read, U stands for update and D stands for delete. So when you have a database, these are the four operations that we generally use on the database, right? So currently I will show how we can make these operations on Firestore, and I'll be using Node.js as the backend language. So let's get started. I will create a directory called demo Firestore. Now I will cd into it. Oops. Okay, now I am going to do npm init because as I said, I'll be using node and I'll keep everything as default. Correct. Now I need three dependencies. I'll be installing npm I and I'll be installing express for my server, Firebase admin to interact with Firestore, and also nodemon. Now nodemon is something that I generally use for development purposes. It basically keeps my server running and it detects any change that I make to the code, right? So think like I'm coding in an editor and I update my editor with the new code, so I don't need to restart the server again to take in the new changes. Nodemon automatically takes in the new changes. So that is it. Once the installation is done, in the meantime, let me go ahead and open this project in my editor. So this is going to be demo Firestore. Okay, here is our editor. I'll close all of these. Now before moving forward with the coding part, I need to do one thing. I'll create a new project. I will call it demo Firestore. Now Firestore is basically a database that Google Firebase provides us. It is very easy to interact with and get started working on it. If you have any side project or any new company or anything like that, like one of my side projects is and does involve Firebase and Firestore as my primary database. The reason being, you can quickly initialize it and you can get started with the coding part. Now we go here to the Firestore database, right? Now we need to create it. I'll do with the get started one. Currently I'll start in the production mode, that's fine. All the default settings stay as it is. Once our Cloud Firestore is provisioned, we can then get into the coding part. Firestore cannot, your location is where Firestore, you cannot change it. Also setting location of your default enable. I don't know why it's not able to provision it. I guess it might work. Okay, it worked this time. Now one thing that we need to make sure is, by default, this rules basically tells us who can read and write to the project. Now for the testing purposes, obviously I will give access to everyone, but when you are actually building it for production, make sure to give permissions only to the people who you rely on, or to the admin, right? You don't want to give access to everyone, but for development purposes I'll keep my permissions simple, right? Now our Firestore is ready. There is one thing that we need to in order to interact from the Node.js app, because how the Node.js app will basically send request to Firebase, either it's create, read, update or delete, right? It needs to have some way of knowing, okay, I need to access this project. For that, Firebase provides us with some keys, like they are the secret keys that whoever with those secret keys goes and hits Firebase API Firebase trusts them and knows that okay, this the place where this request is coming from, I can rely on this source. And that's why we will create a private key and it will generate a new key. It has downloaded. Now wherever my editor is, I'm actually going to copy paste this key, right? I'll copy this, copy, and I'll paste it in the root directory. Okay, it's new. I will create a new file, key.json. I will paste this here and I will delete this. Okay, so our key is saved now. Now what we need to do, we can create server.js. Before that, let me make some changes to package.json. My main file will be server.js as I'm creating express APIs. Here I will do start. So start, I want node-mon server.js. So whenever I do npm start, it should automatically take that into consideration. Now I will create new, not new folder, new file, server.js. Now I will quickly write down the code for the default settings. Obviously we need to require express. I will initialize my application. All these, I think most of you guys know about it. Firebase admin, and then here credentials. Now here the credentials are the JSON file that I just now downloaded from my Firebase project. I will initialize my app using the credential that I just now downloaded, credential dot certificate credentials. Cool. This is done. I will initialize my DB, that is equal to admin.firestore. This is done. App.use express.json. Okay. And in order to start the server, I will just do constant port. Now I generally like to use this. Obviously for development purposes this is not useful, process.environment.port, but if you plan on deploying this project to AWS or any other cloud application, sometimes the port is not 8080 by default, and that's where this comes in handy, and it automatically takes in whatever port is opened for their case, right? So I will create server is running on port. Okay, so this is done. If I do go here, if I go here and if I do node more, or no, npm start will work actually. Npm start, it should start my server without any errors. Okay, so it crashed. Okay, I know the error here. Cool. So see, as soon as I loaded it, it automatically took the changes, as you guys can see, and it started a server. Okay, cool. Now everything is working fine. Now we can start with our endpoints. Now for in the CRUD operations, as I said, create, C stands for create, right? So we'll go with our create endpoint. That is going to be a post endpoint in REST API. Asynchronous request result. Try. Now we are going to try ID is equal to request body.email. So I'm going to send a user account. So I will create an email, first name, last name, just to keep simple. Obviously in your use case you can change it to any JSON data that you need to store, but just to keep things simple, I'm going to give these three fields. Okay, Now here I will do const response, or before that actually I need to get the reference here. So I will get the reference users ref. So the way I do it is db collection. Actually I can do it directly also. So response will be db collection. The collection name will be users, and inside one collection I can have a lot of documents, right? So right now I'm creating a document with the id, which is like each unique email will have each separate collection document. But we will also see what if you guys want to create a default, use a default document id which Firebase provides us with. And you guys will understand in a bit what I'm talking about once we see that. We do a set here, and I will just do a set. We already have a json object with us, so I will do a user json object, and then I will just send this response. The response will obviously contain that okay, our request was successful, correct? So the creator endpoint is created. We see that server is running on port. Okay, I already have a collection created with demo Firestore. I will add a request here. This will be post request, post create, and then my endpoint is http localhost this create body. Now body will contain, I am passing three things: email, let's create email abc@gmail.com. then we have first name, let's say Jack. Last name Ron. I'm just using some dummy values. Now let's hit this. I hope it works. Let's send this. Okay, it didn't work, I guess. Why didn't it work? Let's go here. Let's check our Firestore database. Nothing is created. Rules looks good. I guess our endpoint has some issue. It should actually work. Let's print and see whether the request is coming or not. Okay, and then here, oh, I need to do request.body because everything comes in body. If I send here, it's coming as undefined. Why is it not working? http localhost request.body create. It should work fine. Why is it not working? Oh, I know the reason. So okay, I need to define this, that it needs to use json above. Now if I send, okay, we see here the data is coming fine. Let's go here and see if we get the data. Okay, we get the data, and we get everything what we needed, right? So things are working. It got created. Now you see users is our collection, and the document id is the email that I'm using. Now what if you need a unique id, like there might be a collision that someone tries to use the same email id, and then we need to add some checks and all that. In order to avoid that, what if it's not email, and if none of your fields is unique, right? It could be duplicated. So in that case you need a unique id that Firebase Firestore can create for you, right? So the way it can work is, here we explicitly give the doc id. Let's just remove the doc id. I don't want to give doc id, and I will just use the add method, and I'll just save this. And then if I send a request, okay, it seems to be working. And if I go here, if I see, you see there is a unique id that was created by Firestore automatically, and it has the same fields. So we have now two entries in our databases. Now the next part we will look into is the read part, right? I was not doing await here, that's why it was not, we were not able to see the response anything in the postman. Now let me also move this here. Yeah, cool. Now we will create an endpoint which is read. So we will do read all endpoint, which is going to return us everything that is in the database, like everything that is in our users collection in our case. So we are going to try. Now I am going to create a reference to the collection first. db.collection, and our collection name is users. Now I will create a response, because we will need to await for the response. It takes some time, right, to get everything from the database. Let response array equal to this. Okay, now why I am creating a new response array? The response that we get from the database is going to be an array. Now what we need to do here is we basically need to iterate over the each array, because in the database we have two entries. They come in the form of array. Now when they come in the form of array, in the response we actually don't get the data. We have many other things like the methods, the segments. There are some other things that Firestore adds to it, and we don't need everything. We just care about the data. So we actually need to run over each entry in a for loop, and then we just store it. We just push that doc.data. So data actually contains, each document's data contains the exact data that we need. Now we send response array back, right? Once we send that, we can have a catch block error, and we just send result send error. Okay, so our read endpoint is ready. Let's create a new endpoint. Add request read all, right? We need read all, and we don't need to do anything because we are just going to read. So let's send this. Okay, you see we got all the data. Now obviously the reason we are getting the same data, because the data in each document is same. That's why we see the same data, and there are two documents, right, in our case. If I create a new, let's say Ronald Smith, something like this, and then I name this email as XYZ. So when I send this, okay, it was created fine. Now when I try to read this, we see the three entries, and we see that, right? Okay, so now this is to read, oops, everything, my bad. Now what if I actually want to read just a part of it, like just some particular document? If I have the ID, shouldn't I be able to get that ID, right? So this is how we are going to do for one particular ID. Request result. Okay, I can actually fetch everything from here. Obviously there will be some changes. We need the collection, but at the same time we will pass it as doc, and because we are sending an ID, in order to fetch the ID we basically add that part, because that document is uniquely identified using the ID, right? Now here I do await, and I just don't need to do the for loop, because that one entry, it will just give me one entry, and using that data I can actually get the data. Now I go here, let me create a duplicate of it. Duplicate, read all copy, read one ID. Okay, and then here I can pass in the ID. Let's see what are the IDs. ABC is one email, and then we have this ID. Let's do this ID. I'll copy this and I'll paste it here. Okay, and if I do a send, okay, I see that entry. Let's see if I do this, right? This is because our custom ID that we had created, in our case, that should also work. Okay, I don't think it got copied. @ gmail.com. save this. Okay, let's send this. Okay, awesome, we got the same entry because that's the entry value. If we copy this one, we should get that one as well. Okay, we get Ronald Smith. Cool. That is also working fine. Now we go to the update part. Let's say if we want to update something, I'm going to create a post endpoint for update as well. Try catch correct. Let me copy paste everything as it is because there won't be much changes to it. Obviously it's a post, so I'll be sending the email and everything else. Let's say I send the email or any particular ID. Let's use ID, and then let's say I just want to update my first name, so I will be sending first name. Let's make it hello world. I know it's no one's first name, but in our case it is. So we do a doc here, and then we do dot update, and then in the update we tell them that okay, we need to update the first name field with new first name, and then just send back the response whatever we get. Obviously in the response we don't get the data, but we can see that change happening. I go here, let's go to Postman. I will do a duplicate of this post update is like this, and then first name. Anyways, we just need to send the ID because that is what is important, right? And then if I send the ID, okay, it didn't give me anything, but you see we got the hello world here. The reason it didn't give us that is because we forgot to put an await. Correct. Let's see if I can change the name for some other ID. I just copy this. Now you see the magic here. If first name is Jack, I'm sending the ID as this, send. Okay, and then we got the hello world, right? And it worked fine. Cool. That's all we need to do here. Okay, I think we are using user ref here, and I need to do that. That's why we didn't get a response. But if I send this again, we get the okay, we get that it took this many seconds, nanoseconds, which is fine. So our update endpoint is done. So in CRUD we looked into C as create, R for reading, U for update, and the last part D is for delete. So for that I'll use delete, delete ID sync request response. The delete one is the easiest of all. I'll just copy paste this, and here I just don't need anything like this. I don't need this. I just need okay response. Okay, I don't need the update because I won't be updating anything. I'll just do a delete method, and the ID that I'm passing is because I'm passing in the URL, it will be params ID. Cool. So our delete endpoint is ready. Let us create that, duplicate. I'll change this post. No, it will be delete, okay, and then delete. We'll see abc@gmail.com because that's the ID, that's one of the IDs that we want to delete. If I send this here, we get the right, and if we should see only 2 entries, and you see that abc@gmail.com document is deleted. Cool. So that's all for this video. We looked into CRUD operations, how we can implement them using Node.js on Firestore, and I'll be covering more stuff on Firestore because lately I've been working a lot with Firestore and I learned a lot, so I want to share all of that with you guys. If you guys like this video, please subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and follow me on Instagram. Thanks for the support.